Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today at the New Tomorrow Summit by IAC and the Paris Center for Peace and Innovation. I'm Noa Kolp, the head of the Technology and Startup Banking Group at IDB Bank, Discount New York. COVID-19 is affecting the world in many ways and is causing an enormous economic uncertainty and volatility. At our session today, Innovating Our Way Out from Obstacles to Opportunities, we will focus as much as possible on the bright side of this challenging period of time, and we will try to suggest ideas on how to find opportunities in difficult environments. Four of the most experienced figures in the Israeli-American tech ecosystem will be assisting us with our mission today, not an easy mission. Soffer Teeni is the general manager of Facebook Israel. Golovinsky is the general manager of Intuit Israel. Yaniv Garty, Intel Israel general manager, and Chemi, the founder of Bitengo VC and the chairman of the board of the Paris Center of Peace and Innovation. Hello to all of you, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi. Good afternoon. Good evening.
Good afternoon. I would like to start at the more, I would say, personal angle. You're all accomplished, successful, and experienced leader, but I would like your personal take on this situation. How did COVID-19 affected your lives and the way you look at the world we live in? Let's start with you, Adi.
Maybe I'll start by saying that, first of all, amazing to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
That's a great start.
And I think that the first thing is that, everyone in my family and close to me are all healthy. So obviously, when talking about, personal experience during this time, I'm privileged to be in a position that I can talk about the non-health related impact. And the most important one was a lesson in humbleness. And there are probably two main things here. The first lesson in humbleness was that this period has shown us the power of nature. I don't know about you, but this is, sitting at home and feeling powerless, and how powerless we all are in the face of this pandemic. It doesn't matter who you are for the first time, where you're from, if you are rich or poor, if you have a master's degree or you didn't finish school. All of us all over the world experience this together. So one lesson in humbleness. And then the second one, which actually keeps me awake at night, was the realization that there are so many things we do in a certain way just because we are used to it. And that has developed a sort of a limit to the way we think, to the way we do things. We are used to living our lives in a certain way, buying groceries in a certain way, working in a certain way, meeting friends in a certain way, spending time with the family in a certain way. And all of a sudden, we couldn't do those things anymore. We had to get very creative. And I believe all of us initially thought that this is going to be a terrible experience. Our whole life, suddenly turning upside down, at least mine, and we can't go to the office anymore and see our parents and all of those things. But during this period, and these past few months, I've realized for the first time how much our habits are almost like a prison. It was like...
Okay, Chemi, what's your take?
First of all, great words. I share what Adi said. I'll make maybe a few additional comments. First of all, I'll say that the first thing I sensed is how fragile the world is when a virus, which is invisible, really causes so much trouble, so much fear and despair around the world. Personally, I felt very lucky because our business and our activities have managed to continue, and even some parts of it in a higher rate of success. And I was at home, safe, and I felt that I'm lucky that I'm part of the technology ecosystem. I was also inspired by the global collaboration, coordination, and cooperation. There's been, of course, some little wars about protection measures like masks, like nose swabs, like ventilators. But in general, seeing the collaboration around the world, the race to find a vaccination, drugs, and diagnostics has been quite inspiring. I was also inspired by the way our companies reacted and responded immediately They took measures to protect their people, to protect their business, and very quickly turned into looking for the opportunities.
Chemi, we're going to speak about the professional points in a little bit. Yaniv, how did COVID-19 affected your life and the way you look at the world in a non-professional way?
So I was at home. Sorry, you're talking to Yaniv. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. And just a couple of additions. I think kind of it might sound cynical, but on a personal level, I'm still searching for the fast forward button to get away from 2020. I think all of us have experienced some of the longest weeks of our lives during the last few months. I think we are all witnessing a historical moment or a period, because this is a crisis which is not only deep but also very wide. And I think one of the lessons I can add to what Adi and Chemi mentioned is the being able to get to a sense of clarity, clarity of purpose, the clarity of action, and how we use that both on our personal lives and our professional lives.
Jean, you were in the US at the point where, due to the corona, you weren't able to fly to Israel. And you ran the company from where you were, the US. And at first hand, you can tell us, does it really matter where you are?
Well, I'm still in California, right? I'm on the West Coast time zone. And when I moved to Israel to run into the Israel Development Center in Tel Aviv in 2019, the plan was all along that I will make often trips between Tel Aviv and San Francisco, Mountain View headquarters. When I came here into California in March, little did I know that I'll probably stuck here for 4 to 5 months now. So I think global pandemic blurred geographical boundaries, although we decided to keep the time zones. And the situation when everybody's working from home, it doesn't really matter that much where the home is, as long as you stay connected to the company, to your employees. But it is an interesting point, though, with everybody in the tech industry, or almost everybody in the tech industry, working from home and trying to work from home. What do you do about the company culture? How do you preserve company culture? How do you hire and absorb new employees? How they, by osmosis, adopt the company culture? Company culture is not just driven by the physical space, although that's a big part of it, but it's also a common mission, and ours is power and prosperity around the world. And people are so used to, at this point, people are so used to interacting in certain ways. The proverbial water cooler conversation is no longer possible. Swinging by somebody's desk and having a quick chat is no longer possible. So we had to figure out what to do about it, how to stay present while being absent. This is my challenge. And, to a degree, I believe in the very virtualized and even more so virtualized world. It means and matters less and less where you are physically, as long as you're connected. And that's what modern technology allows all of us to do, to stay connected. But the lives are upside down for everyone. There's no question about it.
Yaniv, Intel has more than 13 employees in Israel. How does a company with so many employees work and function remotely?
I think you meant 13,000.
13,000.
Yeah, quite a bunch. I mentioned before clarity of purpose and action. I think for us, immediately after all of this started, it boiled down to two things: ensure the safety and well-being of our employees and their families, and ensuring business continuity with an eye on our customer needs. We didn't turn off the lights at any of our sites in Israel at any time. There are certain things that we cannot do remotely. We have a big advanced manufacturing site. People need to be there. We have design and engineering labs. We have data centers. So there have been more than a few, quite a big number of employees that went to on site daily. But we still had the majority of employees working from home. It helped us with those on site to kind of space things and keep their safety. And for those working from home, in many ways, working from home is not something which is foreign to us. We have started enabling that to those who can do their job remotely about a decade ago. And we're a global company, like the other companies. We have all the tools. We have video conferencing and all of that. But it goes way beyond that. It's the how you make sure that people are feeling emotionally safe. How do they feel that there is stability? Things like making sure that we don't have any of our employees, and also our subcontractors being laid off during the pandemic, helping people financially with things like babysitters and things like that, all the way to taking more of a focus on the emotional side of things, how you manage remotely, how you create a team culture like Gene mentioned before. And all of that is also leading to driving the business continuity. At the end of the day, we're a business. We reported a very strong Q1. We also had an outlook for Q2. Here in Israel, we met all of our targets, which also has a very positive impact on the Israeli financial indicators, because it helps on exports indicators, GDP. Last year, we have been about 1.6% of the GDP of Israel, and also the employment rates. So all of that together, kind of the two kind of are basically tied together, weaved together. But these were the two things that we were focusing on throughout the time.
Adi, it seems like Facebook has a crucial role, more than ever, allowing people to stay connected. Are there any changes in the way you work and do things because of COVID-19?
So first of all, like similar to what Yaniv said, and probably even easier for us being a software company working from home, was something that we relatively adopted too fast. At the same time, it creates a lot of challenges on, culture and how to brainstorm and be creative together. I think that there were three top of minds. One is obviously making sure that our platforms are being used in, the right way, and connecting people was more important than ever. So a lot of focus on that, with massive increase in volume across the board: Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, Messenger, Live, that was used by so many, like the discussion we have right now, but artists, journalists, so supporting politicians, supporting all of them. Launching a new product was a focus on new products in general, but video rooms around connectivity was the top of mind. So thinking about the new products or moving fast in releasing features and products was very important to us. Then another pillar was to make sure that information is being shared properly. We were searching for the right information every day. I think that we were all becoming addict of data. And we built an information center, which is basically available to everyone every day on their feed, and 2 billion people used it. Focusing on how to do that and how to work with the health organization globally was important, but also to make sure that we take misinformation outside of the platform in a very consistent and fast way. And then the last one would be figuring out how Facebook can be used to help in the economic recovery, especially with small businesses, with a pledge of $100 million. And in Israel, we actually have a really cool project. We work with all the tech companies, including Wix and Fiverr and many of the startups, to try to help small businesses recover fast. So I think these were like the top of mind for us during this period. And of course, culture and work from home.
Gene, how did you in Intuit kept the positive can-do attitude and stayed innovative during this crisis?
That's a great question. Initially, when this whole work from home started and people were trying to figure out how to adapt, we actually expect a drop in productivity for engineering teams. And in Israel, we're just pure engineering team. We even had a conversation: how do we do replanning? Can we keep all of our deliverables? Not one team did the replanning and delivered on time just about all the obligations that they're committed before the pandemic started. That was just purely amazing. The company itself made sure that employees are most productive at home, and that goes from supplying large screens and ergonomic keyboards and ergonomic chairs to the employees that need that, upgrading broadband connectivity for those that needed that. And even more so, in a very few weeks, we launched 3 new offerings that are related to the recovery plan. That's Intuit Aid Assist, their free website, an interactive tool to help businesses, small business owners and employees, and the individual consumers to understand how much and what they're eligible from the CARES Act that Congress has adopted. QuickBook Capital is non-bank approved lender that allows paycheck protection program that you can register through and get the loan through QuickBooks, which is obviously done in minutes. And TurboTax stimulus registration, as many of you know, people that receive stimulus check from the government receive it faster if they actually have an electronic record with IRS. So even if people never filed taxes through TurboTax, they could do that now for free, just to have the record, and they have their stimulus check deposited quite immediately. I mentioned before that the low-run companies, people are kind of galvanized by the common mission, and ours is power and prosperity around the world. People really felt the sense of purpose, and engineers felt the sense of purpose. It's no secret to anybody, small businesses are suffering. The unemployment all over the world is very high. I think the sense of gratitude and obligation that Intuit employees can help others stimulated quite a bit of creativity and adaptivity across the board, from US to Israel.
Chemi, how do you and Pitango do business these days? Do you look at companies and investment opportunities differently than before? Probably yes, but your take is interesting.
The second answer is yes, of course, we do business in a different way. But how do we do business? First, I think that we learned that things that we started before COVID-19 was very easy to continue. We closed the fundraising. We sold a couple of companies. One of them was announced today. We closed some rounds of funding. So it's easy to work on Zoom and emails when you are continuing a process. It's harder to start new things. And Zoom does not allow you really a good judgment of people when you want to recruit people, or to look at a young company when you don't have a sense of the founding team. It has to be physical at the end of the day. There's also, we miss the fact that in real life, you are near people, and sometimes you are in a certain area and they tell you should meet this guy, you should talk to that guy, and opportunities are created. You cannot do it on Zoom. As for the kind of companies, first question in a company is, will they survive the next COVID-19, maybe COVID-20, who knows, 21? Will they be able to be resilient and productive and cross the pandemic or the plague or the crisis, whatever it will be? We discovered that the world is divided to a physical part and a digital part, and your business model needs to be adapted to both spheres. So when one thing goes down, you can still run your business on the other one. And bear in mind, in this crisis, the physical side was shut down, the digital side was open, but tomorrow we can experience something different, where a cyber attack, we shut down all our digital aims and we'll have to work manually. So fragility of companies is becoming critical when we look at a new investment opportunity.
We're looking at an industry shift these days on hot trends that are cooling down while new stars are shining. Adi, which sector do you think will be dominant and fast growing from now on?
So at the beginning, we were trying to look at the industries, especially on the tech and startups, which are our focus in Israel. And we were trying to assess what would the future look like for them. And we built a kind of a 2x2 model. So imagine like the horizontal line represent the company's financial resilience, how much money they have in the bank, of course, but also strong business model, strong unit economics, etc. And obviously companies that enter this crisis with a stronger economical resilience will survive better regardless of the industry. But the second one, or the vertical line, represent what we call a situation market fit. So not product market fit, but situation market fit for product and services that are relevant today and in the coming, few months and few years. And then few verticals comes to mind. I'll just share, I think that B2B SaaS, and especially companies that rely on an online funnel rather than face-to-face and long-term sales processes are super interesting, and Monday.com is a great example for that in Israel. But also consumer tech startups like JoyTunes and Lightrix and many, many others that have a very strong situation market fit, not only saw an amazing acceleration during these last 2 months, but I think that have a very strong coming few years ahead of them.
Jean, what's your take? What stars are we going to be shining the next few years?
Even before COVID and the global pandemic, the world was becoming, and rapidly so, more and more virtualized. We were using virtual presence devices, video conferencing and all of that. A few years ago, we actually made a bet on digitizing service industry. And even more now than before, it is clear that the bet is correct. Just imagine that you need to file taxes. That's what we do. We help people to file taxes. And you can actually enjoy the consult of the professional accountant through TurboTax Live. That doesn't necessarily require for you to go to a brick and mortar store and to talk to the person face to face. That person can reside anywhere on the planet. The same applies to QuickBooks Live. You can connect to the accountant and to get a professional advice how to organize your books. Digital payments experiencing quite a bit of growth. It was growing already, it's now even more so. So it's pretty apparent that with this pandemic or another pandemic may be coming, people will prefer to do as much as possible virtually, and having ability to enable people to do so safely, effectively, and reliably is becoming not just a trend, but a necessity. It's not a fashion anymore. If you watch CNBC Mad Money, that they will tell you there are some companies that were tailored for pandemic, and there are some companies that succeed quite immensely during this time because of the ability to enable virtual collaboration and virtual communication. That is not to say that it doesn't open additional problems with the cybersecurity, as Chemi mentioned. We have to be very watchful about that, but it is an opportunity for both cybersecurity and AI to do better and to enable more reliable and more usable virtual experiences for people and businesses.
Thank you, Jean. Chemi, what's your estimation? We're going to be the shining stars, and unfortunately, we will be what trends and what sectors we're going to be seeing cooling down?
So the first two observations is that, first of all, the world got a push in the back towards technology and innovation. People use technology like they never did before, and I would assume probably a decade ahead. That happened in distance learning, in digital health, in other areas. So first, I would say everything that relates to data. Most of our companies are actually building their exit strategy with data. It's data-driven exit and monitoring of the situation. So those who will contribute to the connectivity to the digital network will probably be very strong. Another area is digital health. I think whatever we can do outside of hospitals and outside of physical touch, we flourish, and we see tremendous growth in our healthcare companies. Cybersecurity for sure, because we saw what happened when Iran and Israel exchanged some cyber attacks during COVID. And you need to remember that when you have a global crisis, it should not stay only in one dimension. There will be other dimensions. It's healthcare, it's economic, it's cybersecurity, and maybe others will come in. So I think that those are the three areas that I would say would benefit from the crisis. And of course, there will be others. And I think that to add to that, I think is the new business models that will arise, companies that will be able to address, as Adi said, the situation product fit will also benefit.
Thank you, Chemi. Yaniv, your take is that not everything is Corona, and that companies should focus also on field and solutions and services that are not Corona related. Can you explain more about this opinion of yours?
Yeah, first of all, definitely Corona and the pandemic are top of mind in terms of personal safety. But when we look at where we are today, a minute before it all started, we were still part of a journey which is a technological revolution, which was centered around data. We are a known brand, but probably people who are not aware of the fact that under the hood of many of the things we do online and virtual, there are computing or AI or cyber or networking solutions that we are dealing with. We also kind of famous for Moore's Law, and Moore's Law also applies for data. We are seeing that the amount of data the humanity produces doubles every 18 months. So every 18 months, we produce the same amount of data as the rest of history for humankind. But what's also interesting about that is up until lately, we have been using only about, and depends on which research you look at, 3, 4, 5, 6% of that. I think what we have seen during Corona is an uptake, an acceleration of the usage of data in different domains, different activities, distance learning, online services, ordering food, distance medicine, and I think Adi mentioned about a shop owner and how they now manage their supply chain management and customer base. So there is going to be, in our opinion, not only an increase in the amount of data, but also the ability to actually use the data and drive new services out of it.
I would like to speak now about the long-term effect of COVID-19 on innovation, technology, and Yaniv, you acquired Movit a month ago for $1 billion. Do you expect acquisitions, deals like this, to be less common from now on, at least in the near to medium future?
I think there's a great session right after us of and Neil are going to talk about, I think you dubbed it as acquisition in flip-flops or something like that. So they're going to talk more in details about the Movit acquisition. And we are very happy. It's if I didn't lose my math, it's the 19th acquisition that Intel has made here in Israel. So it's definitely something we're proud of. We have two main kind of arms which are kind of working together with the innovation ecosystem or the startups. One is Intel Capital. The other one is a growth program that we call Ignite. We do see that Intel Capital continues to invest. They've announced about a month ago investing $132 million in about 11 companies. So that's a good pace. But we do see, and that's from dealing with early stage startups in a growth accelerator, that if up until COVID broke, for those great companies, money was probably, funding was probably not part of the top 5 things they had on their list. It became, right now, money is listed on all 1 to 5. And definitely, it's time, those times changed. I think we'll continue to see acquisitions, we'll continue to see investments. There is a delay with some of those. I see programs coming out of, especially in Israel, from the Israel Innovation Authority. I think it's critical to help bridging funding for startups, because they are not accustomed to use the banking system for money. And we do see, when we started our second round of the accelerator and we went all virtual, we were concerned about the engagement of people. But how silly it may sound, actually the fact that people are not traveling helped quite a bit. So many investments and acquisitions are based on personal relationship. And I think people are starting to find ways to create and build those bridges. Even if you do that virtually, it takes more time, it is done differently. But once those are established, the rest can follow.
Chemi, we're seeing major decline in investment at startups the past few months. How do VCs and investors operate, and what's the likelihood of a startup to raise capital these days?
So thank you for the question. We have multiple funds which are focused on early stage and growth. On the early stage side, those companies that are now raising money and they are aiming towards what we call the new normal are extremely attractive, and we know that they're going to develop their products and launch them either in 2021 or 2022. So that is, in my mind, a no-brainer. You find a great team and you invest in that team, and you know that the milestone will bridge over the next 18 to 24 months. That's a no-brainer. With regards to the growing companies, many companies are now growing faster, and actually they enjoy the excessive demand because of the crisis. And I think these companies are now raising additional funds in order to extend their runway, another opportunity for us to participate in companies that either we missed or by the time we wanted to invest, it was a little bit too expensive, but they made a way, and we're looking at both sides. I think it's more challenging for those companies that are young, have not yet attracted enough interest from customers nor from investors. They have a short runway. They will be challenged by their ability to raise money, primarily because of the reason that, you know, in Israel we don't sense it, but the US is going to enter a terrible global financial crisis, and that is the thing that worries me most than anything else. So these companies will not be able to make it, unfortunately. But still, I think that the level of innovation, the ability of Israeli companies to pivot and to adapt to the new change, and this is the subject matter of this discussion, is really outstanding. The creativity, the ability to turn around on a coin is extremely interesting. And I can tell you from looking at our portfolio, we had, thank God, none of our companies really was hit in a way that is irrecoverable.
For entrepreneurs and founders that are watching us right now, what is the way to break out of the mentality of self-preservation into the mode of seeking opportunities, or if to use the cliche, how to turn lemons into lemonades? Adi, let's start with you.
Cool. Maybe just to refer to what Chemi said, and I think that early stage startups may see some challenges in the coming period, and we talked to many of them. However, it's also an opportunity, and you see those VCs that understand that it's going to be an opportunity period to find an amazing companies to invest in. So I think that there's also a lemonade even for early stage startups. And to your question about entrepreneurs in the room, so the first thing I would say is that they can teach all of us how to adapt fast. You know, probably these entrepreneurs knows better than anyone on this panel how to actually do that. But few things maybe to keep in mind. One is that many people mistakenly, and that's also true in big companies, think that in crisis mode companies need to centralize more and, you know, centralize everything, decision, resources. I actually think that it's exactly the opposite. I think that in crisis mode you need to decentralize as much as possible and give small teams the ability to move fast and adjust. There's actually a Harvard Business Review article that is really strong, you know, creating a really strong argument around that. So that's one. The second thing that is very relevant to startups is that balance between long-term and short-term bets. And it's time for shorter-term bets. So it's like move fast, move even faster. And the way I see it right now, and also in the last 2 months working with many startups, many of these quick wins or short-term opportunities can actually present a really cool long-term bet for the company. But move fast on product, on launching, on looking at the data and reacting to it, whether it's geography opportunities or audiences opportunities or product. And then the last one would be, or maybe two. One is to capitalize. It's time to capitalize on strong talent and culture. I think everyone said it before. And entrepreneurs that really are figuring out how to do that, how to bring their culture to life, and how to capitalize on the talent they've hired right now more than ever would be more successful. And the last, for me, is one that is a bit more emotional, and it's for me, it's like trying to imagine how everything would look like when this crisis will be over. And imagine ourselves at that, end line, and we look back, and are we proud in the way we showed up, in the way we showed up with our employees, in the way we showed up with our investors, in the way we showed up with our clients and customers, and not less important, in the way we showed up with our families. So the hindsight and look back perspective, I think, is one I would think of every minute of every day.
Yaniv, what's the way to do it? You have long experience as a senior manager and executive. How do you leave this mentality of self-preservation and move into the mode of seeking opportunities and being innovative and creative?
If you'll allow me to bore you with a bit of a sports analogy,
Okay.
If you look back at history, humanity did go through some major crises before, whether other plagues or wars. Humanity always excelled afterwards. I think there are huge opportunities, whether it's startups or medium-sized companies or big companies. But in order to do so, you cannot take your team off the field. You cannot just play defense. You have to have the right mix of defense and offense, but also be looking all the time whether the rules of the games are changing on you. So you have to listen, which means you have to look for opportunities and adapt to the mix of type of players you have on the field. So again, for the basic analogy, it all drives at the end. Those who can change, those who can adapt, those who can understand their assets, those who play offense while others may play defense, go to a saying which I kind of find quite important these times, of Andy Grove, which was one of our founders. He said that at times of crisis, weak companies are being destroyed. Good companies will survive, but great companies will improve, will excel. And I think those who will be quick on strategy, play the defense, but have always the offense team on the field. Those will excel and thrive after this.
We have to really finish in 2 minutes. Jean, what's your take? And I understand that you believe that large corporation, they have a role in helping small and medium companies, especially at these times.
Without a doubt. And I think one of the most dangerous things is to say business as usual. There's nothing usual about the business right now. And I think if you're actually trying to pretend that there's business as usual, they're doing the service to you, to your employees, and to your customers. I think Adi, you mentioned, maybe, and everybody had quite a bit of wisdom to share. But how you show up to your customers, how you're reaching out to your customers, how you're helping your customers, and we're into it as in business of helping small businesses, right? Small businesses are the most impacted right now. How we helping them, how we're standing up for them, is fundamentally how we succeed. Their success is our success, without a question. And we've been very thoughtful in understanding how we make the most based on our experiences, how to help to get to the financial resources that they need. There is one more thing, is that the whole pandemic kind of showed to us that we can be productive working from home. It doesn't mean that we have to abandon our offices, but it does mean that we can and should rethink how we approach our office space, how we approach competition for talent. In many ways, competition for talent is very brutal, and in many cases, we just kind of now would be able to allow for people to work remotely while becoming part of our family. So if you want, we would think about the hubs of talent, right? That's the Tel Aviv hub, that's the Bay Area hub, and so on.
Thank you, Jean. And thank you our wonderful panelists for today. Soffer Teeni, the General Manager of Facebook Israel, Golovinsky, the General Manager of Intuit Israel, Yaniv Garty, Intel Israel General Manager, and Chemi Perez, Managing General Manager of Pitango VC and the Chairman of the Board of the Center, the Paris Center for Peace of Innovation. I'm Noa Kolp, the head of the technology and startup banking group at IDB Bank, Discount New York. Thank you all for joining us today at The New Tomorrow. Good luck and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.